Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Friday the 28th of July, 2023. I am back in the office in Wilmington, North Carolina after being out in the desert Southwest over the last week or so. And I can tell you it is absolutely as hot as everybody says it is out there. And it might even get worse, if you can believe that, as we get into August. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but yes, it looks like the heat dome out there is poised to strengthen. We'll take a look at that from a tweet from our good friend Eric Webb. But in between now and then, we're going to also look at climatology on today's update. A little reminder of where we've been and where we are probably going to go over time. That's climatology. And then, of course, current conditions as we head towards August, waiting for August to get here. And I mean, even just looking at the thumbnail title card graphic, you can tell it's kind of busy out there. No, we don't have any named storms or hurricanes, but we are very close to sort of that tipping point. Despite the mid-level dry air and the overall stable nature to the atmosphere across the deep tropics, it is rather busy with a few areas of interest. So we'll look at that, as well as a thread over at our friends from Storm 2K, different people debating about how the season is going. I'll show you some interesting stuff from there as well. All right, so it's going to be pretty busy today on the old update. Good to have you with me. Let's get started. First of all, in the Atlantic Basin, just a friendly reminder, this is climatology for you. We are over here. Things are typically supposed to be rather quiet. And we've already had one hurricane this year. That was Don. We'll look at that from another perspective in just a moment. But it's not until we get until around August 20th or so, out to about October 10th. It's really this time frame right through here that things get the most busy in the Atlantic Basin. And it's about a 6-week period or so, roughly, maybe 6 to 7 weeks, that we see the most activity. And I think that's what's going to happen this year. We're going to get to mid to late August. Things are going to fire up. We'll have a couple of lulls, but I think things are going to be really, really busy. And I've already showed you why over the last several weeks to months, but we'll revisit it again today. I believe that's where we are headed. I'll try to convince you. And, hopefully I'll be wrong in terms of the impact perspective. We don't want that. But if the hurricanes are coming, we certainly want to be ready for them. Another way to look at climatology, first named storm usually by June 20th, the first hurricane by August 11th in the Atlantic Basin. We've already had Don. And then the second hurricane is usually by August 26th. I do believe that we will match, maybe even exceed that. We'll see. Third hurricane's by September 7th, and so forth and so on. The first major hurricane usually happens by September 1st. As you are well aware, several different agencies, universities, private weather companies, you name it, are predicting a very busy season with as many as 10 hurricanes and maybe even 5 major hurricanes with a very high ACE count, the accumulated cyclone energy, the wind output energy from these systems when and if they do form. And so we have a ways to go to get there. But make no mistake, it can happen. Look at 04. That season didn't even get started with Alex until just about now. It was the very end of July, and then we went all the way through September, August and September, of course, with a very busy time of it, including very frightening Hurricane Charlie, August 13th. We had Ivan in September, Gene in September, many other hurricanes in between. We ended up with a kind of mediocre season in terms of numbers, but a very high ACE count. But my point is, within that 6 weeks, from the 1st of August through the end of September, which gave us Gene around the 25th, we had a lot of landfalls. And it was a very big impact season for the U.S., condensed to about a 6-week time period. So something to keep in mind, all right? Moving along to the current conditions, it's interesting. This feature in the Atlantic Basin looks like it could come over and get into the Eastern Pacific with a high chance of development overall. Speaking of the Atlantic, here are our disturbances in the Atlantic Basin. This is X95L. It's made it all the way from Africa, all the way across. Thought it might try to develop. It did not. Again, there's a lot of dry, stable air still out here. Really has nothing to do with El Nino overall. The shear is not too big of a problem. It's that dry air, not allowing the thunderstorm activity to flourish. A very typical thing to see in July. Nevertheless, this is going to cross over, it looks like, and try to develop somewhere out here in the Eastern Pacific. Then we've got the system that moved inland and Luckily, it did so because it was well on its way to organizing. I'll show you on satellite and radar in just a minute. And then here's our next feature that's got about a 60% chance of developing out over the subtropics up here. Another robust wave coming off Africa, a very large area of energy, and we'll see what happens with that. So really, if you think about it, we do have activity out there. It's the mid-level dry air, the stability or lack of instability, stability issues, I guess is a way to put it, that's kind of keeping things down. Once we strip away that impediment, we should have a very busy season. Now, I don't know for sure. I could be dead wrong, and it could stay dry out there the whole time. I don't know for sure, right? But I'm telling you, and I'll show you in a little bit, that's what they talk about at Storm 2K. That's why these websites are important. People watch this stuff, and it's the collective group sort of consensus that it looks like things are going to get busy based on what we're seeing and the model guidance going out into time. But we don't know for sure. If we did, I would do stuff like guess all the Mega Millions numbers today and or whenever it is, and you know the rest, right? But we don't. We don't know the future. We just do the best we can. But I think the evidence is leading towards and leading us towards a very busy time coming up. Now, there's the system that was 95L, and I'm telling you what, if it is starting to do this over here, you know, like a day earlier, this would be making landfall in Central America as a tropical storm, and a strengthening one at that. Now let me just kind of point out something obvious. This is very, very important. A big thing about El Nino is they say, and I'm just doing the air quotes, you know, they, the different people in science and academia, that El Nino creates upper level winds across the Caribbean that are an impediment to development. Shear, that's what we call it. Well, let's look at our tropical system down here. I don't see any shear to speak of. In other words, I don't see the clouds doing this, where they're just all spreading out away from the system. Like you take cotton candy and you pull it out. You don't see it either, right? Because there's very little shear down there. Where is the strong wind shear from the El Nino? That thing is bubbling up, trying to turn. It was so close. Really, it was on its way, and then it's going to run into Central America. Now, that brings impacts, believe me. Very heavy rain. We don't want to discount that. But I think it's interesting that we're not seeing this thing get sheared apart all over, just like shredded from the supposed very strong winds that an El Nino creates. Just thought I'd point that out. Kind of curious. You know, I thought so anyway. Then we have our other little system here that almost became a more significant system. It just ran out of time. And that formed from an old surface trough out here in close development. Those can be sneaky. You never know. You get a tropical wave sitting out here, and 36 hours later it comes through the Keys as a very powerful hurricane. Just saying. Yes, these things can happen in very short order when the atmosphere cooperates. And right now it is not cooperating, and that's keeping everybody on the good side of things for the time being. Looking out farther to the east, there's our large area of energy in the deep tropics, but also there's your telltale signature of the dry, stable air around it. Absolutely. You give it another few weeks, and these drier, more stable air masses are going to be more up to the north. These systems will come off. They'll last longer. They'll get over to where conditions are more favorable, and then we're going to have problems. I just think it's a matter of when, not if. And again, another perspective of this system approaching Central America. I mean, whatever wind shear down there is very minuscule. This thing is not getting all pulled apart. You've seen it. You know what that looks like. And it is not happening. So I think, again, that's pretty curious. All right, looking at the vorticity signature. Yeah, that was trying. Luckily, it moved inland, and it is bringing some rainfall to parts of Florida that need it. Even a little bit of rain up here in my neck of the woods. We had some thunder earlier, thunder and lightning, or lightning first, right? Of course. And got to keep it straight. Loosely related to that system down there. And then our feature moving into Central America. And then, yeah, that's not a good sign right there. When everything's stretched out, you've watched my videos, hopefully. You've been around my channel long enough. And if you're brand new, no, that's not what you look for. You do look for that. It just ran out of time. That's the energy spread out, the vorticity as we call it. It's not consolidated, so until it does so, it's not going to do very much. All right, I know we've talked about this, as the expression goes, ad nauseum. over and over and over, beating a dead horse, whatever you want to call it. But it is so important to what's going on globally with all of the ridiculous high temperatures we're getting. And it's just going to set the stage, I believe. The Atlantic, if you just look at this, I was talking to one of my colleagues last night, Matt from Parker, Colorado, near Denver. Look at the Atlantic Basin and how much of this is warm, and then look at how much of the East Pacific there with our El Nino, just drawing it there. Which one is bigger and more overwhelming? It's not that the entire Pacific over here is just lit up with way high anomalies, and the Atlantic is. They're not even close to equal. The Atlantic Basin far outdoes, if you get what I'm saying, it's outdoing the Pacific in terms of these anomalies. So drop me out for a second so we can focus on this. Then you've got these ridiculous anomalies off the chart, 5, 6, 7 degrees Celsius. The chart doesn't even go past 5C. That's 7, 8, 9, 10 Fahrenheit warmer than average. And yes, I heard from some people up here that it is affecting marine life. It is warmer than it should be. The hurricanes are going to take advantage of that potentially. When they recurve out of the deep tropics and come up here, that could be hugely problematic. Never ever want to just be an alarmist and doom and gloom, but this is not good. It's not, for a lot of reasons. Let's say there are no hurricanes, whatever. We just don't get any for some reason. Those water temperatures being so warm still throw off so many other parts of the atmosphere. You get higher rain rates from your storms because a warmer atmosphere, come on, it's basic meteorology, holds more moisture. And there's plenty of it evaporating from these oceans now. It's just not good. I mean, again, don't want to be a downer here, but that is not a good sign overall. And then we look at the actual temperatures. Remember, those are departures from the average. And then in the Gulf of Mexico, I was kind of hoping this got chiseled away a lot more, but our feature didn't cut through this way. Instead, it cut up like that. So we're still left with 31. We did knock down the 32 Celsius just a little bit. But again, these waters down here are very shallow and easy to disturb, but they're also easy to warm right back up because of the very light winds that have been prevalent down across that region. Even here south of Cuba, yeah, very warm, 31, 32 Celsius. Most of the Gulf now, 30 Celsius or higher. We're talking about 85, 86 to almost 90 degrees plus. And then here off of southwest Louisiana to the central coast near Vermilion Bay. Whew, my good friend up here, Don Moe, who left Sippermore Point, moved up to Youngsville. I cannot imagine. Can you, Don? I'll send this video to him today. Make sure he takes a listen, and he'll like getting mentioned. I can't fathom what that's like. I really can't. And, I know a lot of these folks down here in Louisiana. My heart's with you because I bet it is absolutely crushing the heat and humidity. And boy, we get a hurricane cutting into that. And if the atmosphere cooperates, I don't want to be sounding scary, but this is just not good. Same thing off my neck of the woods. I mean, goodness gracious, 29 Celsius. And I had to look and make sure I was seeing things right. Yes, these oranges are 29 Celsius, right up against the coastline, and some of the nearshore temperatures in the upper 80s. Pamlico Sound, 28, 29 Celsius, and yes, these hurricanes do cut across the Pamlico Sound on their way north and east. Irene did it in 2011, Arthur did it in 2014, and there are many others. These water temperatures also not very, they don't bode well for the east and southeast coast and even up into the northeast. Look at this, 26 Celsius, that's right there, that's 80 degrees, not too darn far south from the islands of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Cape Cod. Fast-moving hurricane cutting up through that? You bet. And these water temperatures up here, 5 degrees warmer than normal, these hurricanes are going to take longer to wind down. This is very serious if, and that's the part here, if something takes advantage of it. Got to be careful to not put the cart before the proverbial horse. Water temperatures alone are not going to give us these calamities. You get other calamities, yes, because they do create their own problems, these warmer than normal temperatures. But in my realm here, what I'm more adept in explaining are the hurricanes and how they could take advantage of that. So far, so good, but we're only at late July. We know all too well that most of the hurricane activity for the Northeast happens after about late August. Now, this is interesting as well. Subsurface of the equatorial Pacific, so this is the east side of the Pacific over here. This is the western side of the Pacific. This is the surface up at the top. And then you have up to 450 meters deep down here. And if you took a slice through it, this is what your profile would be. Departures from the norm. Your anomalies, right? Unless you use sky blue to make it pop a little better. Hopefully. No, it's not going to. We'll use purple. There's no purple in here. We have developed a little bit of a cold pool now. Pretty far deep, but it is there. You don't have one of these over here waiting to come over. Because generally the circulation is this way if you get a lot of westerly winds. We're not seeing that. So we've developed this little bit of a hole, if you will, in the subsurface warmth. But in my opinion, as small as it is, that's enormous. Because that shows that the eastern part over here, where the most warmth is starting to erode, even if it's just a little bit. This is not the sign of a rapidly strengthening Atlantic hurricane season killing El Nino. It's just not. And we'll watch this, see what it looks like in the next couple of weeks or so. So this does animate. I can show you that real quick as we start it over. You see what happens. These anomalies are shrinking, and then you get these cold areas that are popping up. Wow, that is very, very interesting. We lost all that, and look what it got replaced with. Colder anomalies. We're not heading towards a La Nina or anything crazy like that. Not yet, but that's still a very interesting sign. All right, over at Storm 2K, and as they say, full disclosure, Storm 2K is a proud patron or supporter. Their collective group, they support what we do over on Patreon, but we're also really good friends. I know a lot of these people personally, and as I said, I like the consensus of even when people are debating each other. Some are saying, it doesn't look very favorable, I don't think much is going to happen, and you can counter that with observations and data and, of course, forecasts. So what are they talking about? Well, this is in the development thread, if you will, this wind shear, the stability, the indicators, as we call it, the 2023 indicators, and different people kind of saying different things based on what they're seeing. I know this gentleman personally as well from the Outer Banks of North Carolina. He's also one of our patrons. And I think this is interesting. He's been on the Outer Banks for 49 years. He says, I don't think I've ever seen the water temperature at 89 degrees. And it's just shy of 36 north where he saw that. Luckily, as he said, thank God nothing is coming this way. That's exactly right. You just never know. And those water temperatures, wow. I mean, what can you say? He's been there 49 years. That is not hype or hyperbole, as they say. That's the truth. And this dude, again, I know him. He's an Outer Banker. That's why his name on here is Outer Banker. I mean, come on. All right. Also, a lot of people, this is true. July is the most misunderstood month of the season. As many have pointed out, what happens in July has almost no bearing on how the season turns out overall. And the stable July conditions usually persist until late August. That's why we have this. You see, it's all related. And it's just a matter of time. We've got these anomalies. People are talking about them. Yes, there's the troughs that have been very prevalent across the east over here. Big giant ridge out west. The troughing in the east generally. And if anything tries to come across, it could turn out until it doesn't. Right? And you only need a few days of enough ridging, and there you go. Or something comes up out of the Caribbean and gets caught in that trough. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to look at here. Very interesting things. And I thought I'd scroll down and just show you this. This is from Adrian, also known as SFL Kane, like South Florida. Yeah, look at this. Some of the modeling indicating, well, the troughs are there, but then they're transient, getting replaced by pretty strong upper-level ridging. Where? In the Northwest Atlantic. When? As we get into early to mid-August. Not particularly good timing if that turns out to be verified. And you can see that on the CFS as well. This is going out into September. Long range, I know, but look at these height anomalies. There's no big dips. That's very concerning. That gets your hurricanes farther to the west overall. And then even more. This is from Weather Tiger, a very respected group, people trying to figure this out. They're down in Tallahassee. Their ACE predictor is up and up and up. It's already up to 150 above normal. We'll see. I mean, last year it was doing the same thing generally. It started coming down once we got into August. Will it do that this year? Time will tell. Just the indicators are still there. And then you got the weekly model guidance from the Euro really starting to light things up as we get out way into the future. But this is important. I know this is far out in time and it could change, but the models are not showing deadness. They are showing aliveness, okay? Just seriously. This is where we're headed as we get into August. So use the time now, mentally prepare, do what you can to fiscally, with an F, like financially, get ready as best you can, get a few extra supplies, like take this seriously, because it's just logic dictates, I think. And again, you got to be careful because I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have Biff Tannen's. I've used this joke before, so I apologize if you've heard it. Remember Biff Tannen from Back to the Future Part 2? He was in the first one, of course, but he stole the book of 50 years of sports history and became rich. I don't have that for hurricanes because it doesn't exist. If it did, I would tell you. So we do have this, though. This is as close as we can get to Biff Tannen's 50 years of hurricane history, right? Or whatever, whoever wrote that book in that fictional movie. And yeah, the Euro precipitation anomaly through the middle part of August, those are all positive anomalies headed right towards the western Atlantic Basin. This is what people talk about over at Storm 2K, and it's not a bunch of gobbledygook, hype, and BS. It's the facts, and we see where the facts lead us, and I think they're leading towards a very biggest, hopefully not the biggest, a very big August. All right, and hey, this kind of plays right into it, wrapping things up. This is important as well. As you guys know, I have been moving away from just hurricanes. Still, that's my specialty, to cover more extreme weather. Interesting weather doesn't always have to be extreme. Even just a good, gentle snowstorm can be very interesting. It doesn't all have to be extreme, but this is extreme. Eric Webb, he's down in New Mexico now, and very important what we're seeing here as we get into August, that it potentially, as if it wasn't bad enough, a potentially historic August heat wave seems to be looming on the horizon. It's never a good sign when the dreaded 600 DAM, this is your contour lines of the atmosphere basically, is already showing up on the heavily dampened ensemble. In other words, that is a very strong signal for something that's more than 11 days away. It just gets worse and worse, and we got to deal with it. We do. We can't hide it and pretend like it's all going to just be fine. We have to at least mentally prepare ourselves for this kind of stuff and the barrage of hurricanes that I think is coming once we get into the latter part of August. Maybe I'm wrong, and people will be like, you were wrong. That would be a good thing. Trust me, I wouldn't mind, because we know how miserable things can get when they do happen. All right? A reminder, and this has helped to grow a little bit since I've been mentioning it, you can join our Patreon without pledging money. I love the move they've made. It kind of grows it as a social media platform. And then when we have a mission and you want to get involved and support what we're doing and have more access, because that's what it allows you to do, you can do so. And you can control it, and you can pledge up, you can pledge down. I love that. It's a great move. So get the app, Patreon, on your favorite app store, or go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. I make all the posts right now public to everybody on Patreon, so you can comment and you can send me messages. And then when we're going to have an active field mission and you want to upgrade to one of the tiers that gives you all the access to the amazing technology that we have, including the stuff that we tested all last week in the desert Southwest. Yes, that's what we were doing. And let me tell you, we are going to, you'll see, we are ready. That's all I'm going to say. And that's all through the crowdfunding. It really is. So get involved on patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Hey, look, I appreciate the fact that you're just watching on YouTube or wherever, even on Patreon. The Patreon allows us to put native video in Patreon now. That's freaking awesome as well. So it's just getting better and better and better, and it allows me to connect with you and that's what's most important. All right? Have a good weekend ahead. I will probably do a couple of things like relax, and then I'll be back Monday, all right? It looks like things will be pretty calm over the weekend, so let's take a couple of days off, digest all of this that I just gave you because it was a lot, and I'll see you guys again on Monday, all right? I am Mark Sudduth. We are Hurricane Track. We'll do it again on Monday.